price, how people are sensitive. So if the product is very distinct, or the buyers are less aware of the substitutes, or the buyers cannot compare the quality of the substitute, or expenditure is a small part of the buyer's total income, then probably people are not very sensitive. But if the expenditure is call compared to the total cost of the end product, let's say, for example, if you exactly are a economy buyer, okay, so you might like to see what exactly the mileage the car is actually giving you, whether it's giving you 22 kilometer per hour or 21 kilometer per hour or 20 kilometer per hour. So that's a very important aspect for an economy car consumer. But if you're buying a high-end luxury car, basically then you really are not going to be worried about the price of the fuel, simply because you are spending something like about 50 lakh or 60 lakh for a car. So the price of the fuel does not really matter to you. So effectively, your sensitivity depends on the expenditure. So how much about of the expenditure is a component of the total buyer's total income. Then if the expenditure is small compared to the total cost of the end product, then people are not sensitive. But if the part of the cost is borne by sometimes by the other party also, then also people are not sensitive. Let's say, for example, there is a subsidy which exactly has been added. So the major part of the component of the commodity is being shared by a third party, and that's basically what makes you less sensitive. Also, the product, if it is used in conjunction with assets previously bought. Let's say, for example, I've bought a printer. Now I need to buy a cartridge. Now I have to be very, very clear as to what exactly is going to be the running cost of the printer. And that exactly will be determined by the price of the cartridge, or how much exactly the cartridge actually prints. Buyers cannot store the product. Again, that's another important aspect when it comes to sensitivity. That is, how much can you actually store or cannot store the product. If you can store the product, then you would be price sensitive. But if you cannot store the product, that is, in case of a service, you'd be price insensitive. These are some of the dimensions on the basis of which we define the pricing of different products and commodities. Now, then there is another important aspect, that is the cost of production and the type of cost. Now, for example, there is a fixed cost and there's a variable cost. So then effectively what happens is fixed versus variable cost, or total cost versus average cost. All of them also determine the estimation in terms of cost. So as I was saying, that when we are trying to determine the pricing, we need to follow different type of steps. So coming back to the steps which exactly are followed, I would just be coming back to the steps in price setting policy. First happens to be the selecting the pricing objective. I said that different organizations have different type of pricing objectives. That happens to be the first important level on the basis of which you decide your objectives. Then you determine the demand. I told you what exactly are the methods on the basis of which you can determine your demand. And then you estimate the costing. So whether it's a fixed versus variable cost, or whether exactly the price sensitivity, all these things actually, fixed also versus variable, the total cost, the average cost, all of them actually come down to estimating the cost of the product. And also you try to estimate the aspect towards accumulated production, that is experience versus learning curve. So what exactly is the cost? So effectively what happens is, let's say, for example, at 10,000 production points, the current price is at point B, that is $100. Now what happens is you exactly started production, and now the production has actually gone to 20,000, 200,000 or 2 lakh unit. The moment you have 2 lakh unit, then the production actually, the cost actually, it has spread over the number of units that's produced, and then it has come down to something like around 80 rupee per unit. Then it's okay, you can take it. And then let's say, for example, then the price actually comes down to something, when you actually have a production of something like around 40,000 units, then the price actually comes down. So effectively, the cost that exactly is being spread on the total number of units, that basically determines the a price. So as and when it's called the economies of scale, which you can actually call it, where you have the moment you start increasing the amount of production, the costing of per unit item actually incrementally reduces, and that's basically called as the experience or learning curve. That we say that once we start the production in a higher volume, the production cost actually comes down, and it is spread over the number of units, and so you exactly the total cost of production becomes less. So these exactly are some of the aspects towards estimating the cost. Then there is something else which is called as target costing. That is, what exactly is the target costing? Now, definitely you know that whatever is the price that you want to have minus the margin of the profit. So definitely when there's a firm which is operating, it needs a certain amount of margin. Now margin is required or in order to have certain amount of profits. Now these profits can be plowed back into the business, or it can be distributed among the different individuals who exactly have made investments in the business, and this is called as return on investment. So we have to, in order to business to be profitable and in order to grow, we need to actually generate some level of profit. Now how does and where does this profit come from? This profit is actually coming from the cost of production plus the additions, that is actually the profits, is going to give you the total price. So what exactly is the costing? Cost is actually the total price minus the profit, that is the target costing. So you need to come to understanding where exactly are the final pricing going to be and how much amount of margin I require. So you need to know what exactly is going to be the cost of production that exactly is going to be there. Finally, we've got something else which is exactly going to be the fourth step, which is analyzing the competitor's price as well. So the firm must take competitors' cost, price, and reactions also into account. So you cannot be operating in isolation, because definitely the consumer that exactly you are trying to target also has the knowledge about your competing product, the competing price, the competing offers, the competing quality. All those aspects are also there in the minds of the consumer, because the consumer is today very well aware about the options that are there in front of him. So rather, you also have to understand the competition. What is your competitor offering in terms of their costing? What is your competitor's price? And what is their competitor's reaction into the account? That is value priced competitor. So you have to actually look into that dimension as well when you are deciding upon selecting a price. So competitor's price also is an important aspect. Now, then we come to something called as the fifth step, which is called as the selecting the pricing method. Now, selecting the pricing method is something very interesting, simply because we start with the floor. That is, at the floor is the total cost that you exactly have incurred in putting together different factors of production for the thing to be actually available. That is called as the cost of production, and that is also called as the floor price or the low price. Now, the moment you cannot push your cost below this point, simply because the factors of production are the basis for producing a good or a service. So this is the minimum. So let's say, for example, you have manufactured any sort of a product. All the raw material and components that you have brought in together are responsible. And when you add all the unit prices, you're going to get this as the floor price or the lowest price, which can be there. Even it's actually the cost that you have incurred in making that product. I would put it like this. So this is called as the price floor. Then what you need to know is, after the floor price, you'll have to look at the different costs that exactly go over the price. These are overheads. So the moment you get to these costs, you basically come to something called as the different costings in terms of the different type of value that exactly you are adding to the product. And this is competitor's price and the price of the different substitutes that exactly can be there. Finally, you come to something called as the orienting point. Now, the orienting point is given by the competitor's price. What exactly is the competitor price his or her goods? So that will give you a price point where you can orient your goods, or you can align your goods in the terms of the market that exactly you're trying to actually offer. Finally, you've got something called as customers assessment of unique features, that is price ceiling. Now, probably when you exactly have put your goods at par with your competitor, and you have positioned this exactly is the price above the floor price. Now, effectively, how much does your consumer value your good? That's an important aspect. If the consumer feels that your good is very, very valuable, then you need to actually have a premium on this price, that is uh, the competitor's price or orienting price. And the competitor's assessment of unique feature gives you a price ceiling. So probably the amount of value that the customer draws from your goods defines the pricing of the goods that the customer is ready to buy the goods at. So effectively, you have the high price, that is the value price, which exactly is perceived by the consumer, and you've got the floor price. And your goods actually fall, the price actually falls within this range. So you can see a yellow color rectangle and a blue color rectangle. So the yellow rectangle has the high price and low price, while the blue rectangle has the range of price, that is, it's called the ceiling price and the floor price. So your pricing must be there somewhere in between the blue mark. Now, if you have to be successful in selling your goods. Now, we will be looking into this important fifth point, that is selecting a pricing method. Now, there are different type of pricing methods. We have with the markup pricing. We exactly have different types of pricing. We have got the target return pricing, and then we also have the perceived value pricing. These are some of the different type of pricings which exactly are there. Then we have the different type of auction type pricing which can be also understood. So let us look exactly at what exactly is the markup pricing. Markup is actually a price that you decide, which is a function of the cost, the unit cost, and the desired return on sales. So unit cost divided by 1 minus the desired return on sales is the markup price that you wish to keep for your goods. Coming back to the target return price, the price that yields its return on the total amount of investment that you made. Now, definitely, when you are going to make an investment for a sort of a venture, you want a return. So this return, how exactly are you going to justify? This will be on the basis of the target return price. So you'll have the unit cost plus desired return into the amount of capital that you've invested divided by the amount of sales. So this is a value addition that you do to the unit cost. This value addition actually gives you something which is called as the target return price. So once you have done this, you'll get it. Now, there is something called a break even for target return price. Now, this break even means that when you start a business, there is always a fixed cost. Okay. Probably the money does not start coming into the business, but money starts going out of the business. So this fixed cost is actually a price which it's actually a fixed cost, because this is an infrastructure cost that remains. Like, for example, the place where you're going to manufacture these goods, the machine that you have purchased, any sort of a capital investment that you're going to do for your venture is actually a fixed cost. Okay, so this is the fixed cost. This is not going to change whether you make 1 unit or whether you make 1,000 units. Of this fixed cost is going to remain static. The moment you add any dimension to it on top of this fixed cost, this is called as the variable cost. So effectively what happens is the total revenue is equal to the fixed cost plus the target profit. So effectively what happens is you exactly get a point, because when you start a business, you are not going to incur in sales, but you are going to incur only in the cost. So there will be a time when sales are going to happen, but the costing will be more. So slowly sales are going to rise and the costing is going to fall. As I said, that at a time will come when your sales and costing are going to be on the same point. Before this point, there will be losses in the business. Why? Because the money that is going to come in the business is going to be less, and the money that is going to go out of the business is going to be more. But the moment you reach the break-even point, this is the point where the amount of money coming into the business is equal to the money that is going out of the business. Beyond this break-even point, the costing is going to be less and the revenue is going to be more. So you'll start getting profits only after the break-even point. Now, for different businesses, you've got different type of break-even points. And this break-even point is very important because this will give you a realistic picture as to how long you need to be given that hand holding. Because unless and until the time till you are given is hand holding, you exactly are going to enter into losses. Only after achieving the break-even point are you going to actually get into a profit sort of a situation with the enterprise. Now, this is why exactly we need to understand what exactly is the timeline when we exactly reach the break-even point. Then there is something called perceived value pricing. Let's say, for example, my perception about a product or its image is something different from your perception. So effectively, on the basis of my perception, I'm going to have a price. Also, the image of the product. Let's say, for example, a product by a high-end brand and a product by a common brand is going to be priced differently. Why? Because the image that is there in the minds of the consumer about the high-end product vis-a-vis a common product. Also, the channel. Let's say, for example, if you're getting a product by online channel, definitely the price is going to be less. But if you exactly are buying it from a brick and mortar shop, then the price is going to be more, simply because they have to take into account inventories, they have to take into account overheads, they have to take into account the infrastructure, they have to take into account the logistics. All these components are adding to the cost of the product and their profits and their overheads, which exactly are there. But in the case of a online shopping, you don't have to have all these level of inventory management, and you can directly be connected to the warehouse of the manufacturer who basically supplies your goods to your doorstep. So this exactly also adds. Also the support and the softer attitude, that is reputation or the warranties, all of them actually slowly go on adding, and then they create a perception of the price that exactly is there for a good or service. Also, let's say, for example, there is something called the value pricing. Now, value pricing is the different type of value that is associated. Let's say, for example, you get a goods at your doorstep. So effectively, you don't need to go anywhere to buy. So if you get it at your doorstep, the value is that the goods has actually walked to your uh, point of consumption, and that basically is a value which exactly requires a price. So one is you buy the goods at the store, and one is the goods is delivered to you at your doorstep. So the goods which are delivered to you at your doorstep is a higher value, and this value is towards the aspect of transporting these goods to your doorstep. So effectively, this exactly also impacts something called as the value pricing. Um, then we have got something else which exactly is called as the high-low pricing. Now, high-low pricing is for a certain product, there's a certain high price, and for a certain product, there's a low price. So we need to do a comparative analysis about high-low pricing, and this high-low pricing is an important aspect when it comes to deciding on the pricing method. So let's say, for example, if you want to do a high-low pricing, you can understand it in this context that on a specific day of the week, the price of a product is placed high, and on the another days of the week, the price of the product is placed low. Like for example, if you go to McDonald's, like they on the day the footfalls are low. Okay, the day the footfalls are low, because in order to manage their inventory, they decide to keep the prices very low. But on the day the footfalls are very high, they would like to keep the prices high. So this exactly is also available for something called as everyday low price, or EDLP strategy is also used in retailing, especially in retail malls. Like they have a context like Big Bazaar says, "Hafte ka sabse sasta din." Why exactly is it Wednesday? that hafte ka sabse sasta din. So they give you all the offers on Wednesday. Because the peak sales are actually the highest footfall is happening on the weekends. That is, and the sales actually drop it. Wednesday is somewhere in between the two Sundays. Okay, or Saturday, Sunday, it's a sandwiched in between. So effectively, the sales are very high on Saturday, Sundays, and slowly they actually get down to Wednesday, and again they slowly rise to the weekend, that is next Saturday, Sunday. So this is actually a sort of a curve that happens in terms of the sales that is there, the sales, inventory sales in shopping malls. So that is why, in order to have an inventory, because they want to have an inventory clearance, so they can maximize their sales by the number of footfalls on the weekends. So in the Wednesday, they want people to actually come in. So how will they make them come in? By setting a very low price. And that is why they say hafte ka sabse sasta din, and that's why they keep it Wednesday. This is the strategy behind Big Bazaar trying to have a price at that. Also, you have got different type of sales for where basically they have got different aspects in order to draw the consumer, where consumers are actually not having enough amount of footfall. So that exactly is also one of the strategies which exactly is used in pricing. Then there is something which is called the going rate pricing, which exactly is used as one of the pricing methods. Coming back to something called the auction pricing. Now, auction type pricing, what actually it means is whenever there is a demand and supply situation. So basically, somebody is going to get powerful and the other person is going to lose the power. So let's say, for example, if there is one buyer and there are n number of sellers, like for example, you have in your shopping the electronic marketplace. You have got number of people who are offering you goods. So what? And you have got one buyer. So the buyer can dictate that he or she will buy the goods at the lowest price point offered by one of the sellers. So the bidders will try to lower their price in order to get that consumer. But it's the other way around. If there are many consumers and there is one seller, in that case, what happens? The seller will try to control the price and will try to raise the price of the product so that the product is sold to the highest person who offers the highest. So this is basically the ascending and the descending mechanism of the auction type pricing, which exactly is there. And then there is something called the sealed bid, where basically it's something like a tender where everybody offers their prices, and then this exactly is opened, and the person who has offered the best actually wins the bid. So effectively, this is called as auction type pricing is also done. Now, selecting the final price. Now, this is another additional factors are used for selecting the final price. That is, how do they impact of the different marketing activities? Advertisement is done, social media marketing is done, the promotions are done, the different type of contests are done. All of them does, all these different marketing activities, does that actually result in people actually rushing to buy the goods? So that exactly is the impact of the different marketing activities. That also has a bearing on the final price. Like, for example, you must have seen that there are different products which are launched by different movies. So movie stars would be going down in order to promote these products. So definitely there's a cost associated with it, isn't it? So this cost is actually multiplied on the number of units sold, and that exactly impacts the final price of the goods. Also, the company's pricing policy. As I said, that somebody wants to capture the market share. Somebody wants to be the market leader. Somebody wants to actually have the entire brand share of the market. Somebody wants to be a market sharing the goods for free or non like a commercial orientation, and is trying to do some sort of a social work. All these things are the policies on the basis of which also companies actually alter their pricing policy. Then gain and risk sharing price. So who exactly gains or who exactly shares the risk? That is also the basis for pricing, or the impact of price on other parties. So how exactly, like for example, you gave the example of the cold drink sales. The impact of Pepsi will have on Coke, and the impact of Coke price will have on Pepsi. So effectively, these also impact the final pricing decision. Finally, coming back to adapting the prices, there are different type of pricings. Like for example, there is something called the geographical pricing. Now, geographical pricing means I offer one product at one price point in one geography, and in the other place, I offer the same product at a different price point in a different so let's say, for example, if I've got certain type of consumers, like you must have seen like certain mobile phones which are being launched in China and India. So of course there is a price disparity which is there. But probably the mobile phones which recently I was reading an article on the Apple phones, which exactly they say that in India this is the costliest market for Apple phones simply because the components which have a high amount of tax tariff when they import these components in order to assemble the phones even in their Indian production units. That basically increases the price of the components. The price of the components actually jacks up the price of the phone. But in other foreign countries, the price of the same phone is much lower simply because of less tariff and taxes or other important aspects. Then there is something called the compensation deal, or there's a buyback arrangement. As you must have seen that if you want to exchange your phone, you exactly are getting a buyback, or you want to exchange your car, there's getting a buyback. That is, people are ready to buy your product for a value, and that exactly value is transmitted as a price to discount price on the goods that you're going to buy from them. Also, there are certain type of offsets which exactly are done. Now, these are some of the way in which geographic pricing are there. Then comes the most important aspect, that is adapting the price, and that exactly is all about the discount. So we've got different type of discounts. So first amount of discount is quantity discount. So let's say, for example, you want to buy it in bulk, you will get certain type of discount. Then there are certain type of functional discounts. Like for example, if you are doing a different type of uh, activity with the goods that you're purchasing, you are going to, like for example, you must have seen like you have got something called as a functional discount. As a student, when you want to go and buy your laptop, you're given a student discount. When you're going to buy a software as a student, you get a student discount. Now this exactly is called as a functional discount, because they want to understand that the student has to be using this device, and so we'll try to give them some sort of a benefit, because the student is different from a corporate, because the corporate can actually afford higher price, but the student cannot. So you're going to give an economy version to him. Also, you've got seasonal discount. Now, let's say, for example, you've got summers coming in, and today, if you want to go and buy a heater, definitely they're going to say, because they want to remove the stock, they will say that, okay, I'm going to give you a season discount because it's summers and you want to buy a heater, I'm going to give you a discount because I want to move it away. So this is a seasonal discount. Also, there are different type of allowances that you're getting. Now, by allowances, I mean, if you make an extra payment to the retailer, they are giving you some sort of extended warranty, or they are giving you something which is called as a free AMC, or they're going to give you a free replacement of a screen in case you exactly take that sort of an insurance for a specific amount of price. Now, these exactly also impact the pricing. These different type of allowances and price discounts also impact the pricing of the goods and services. So we will be discussing about these different categories of promotional prices, and I intend to be taking this aspect up in the next class that we would be engaging in. So we would be looking at how exactly are the different type of adaptation to pricing is done, and we would be looking at the different type of adapting the prices, how pricings are actually done, and how these are initiated and responded, and how people actually initiate to the responding to the price point, because Indian consumers are very, very price conscious, and that is the reason why when you exactly have to sell different goods in the Indian market, you have to be very, very careful about the price points, because if you are not, then probably you will miss out on the competitor, and the competition is going to take away your consumer, and you will miss about. So you have to be very, very careful when it comes to deciding what is the price point at which people are ready to buy goods and services. So as product is a very important component, price as a marketing mix also happens to be a very, very important perspective when it comes to deciding on the right type of a product. So the right product at the right price is the most important element which can make a product very successful, and a wrong product at a wrong price point can actually create a situation in the market where the product can no longer cease to exist. Because pricing is a very important component. If you remember, I said that there are three reasons why a product will actually work. That is three things why a person would actually buy a goods. That is MAN. That is it's called as money, authority, and need. So money is the dimension that is associated with price. Need is the dimension that is associated with the product or the service, and authority is what we would be discussing in subsequent classes when we're looking at other type of marketing mixes. So I think I'm going to take a small break at this point of time because it's about 35. We will end the class a bit early today simply because of the orientation that exactly is there. So if you have any sort of a query or a question, feel free to shoot. I would be more than happy to address it at this point. Yes? Any takers for any question? Incidentally, I find today we've got a very less number of students who have joined the session. Any specific reason for mass exodus from the group?
Sir, we were not aware that there's a class today for marketing.
Why?
So because it's not in the timetable. Like today is. Yeah.
Okay. No, but we had a class.
No,
it was
sir.
not announced. I'm so sorry about that. In fact, I had this in mind that this was already announced, but really sorry for that. Anam, you should have put that thing across because I was actually under the impression that we would be having this session. But
so my apologies for that, sir.
No. My apologies, I would say. I would need to then repeat this session in the interest of those students who did not join. So none of their fault. Thank you, Anam, for informing me about this today. We will be correcting this error. Don't worry. We'll be repeating this session. Okay, so we will be discounting all the attendances that exactly there. I'm going to supplicate this attendance that people have joined for some of the other classes that they have missed. Okay, so that's credit that I'm going to extend to all of you for joining this one. I hope I have not indulged in any level of exclusion into any other area, any other teacher's class, because I believe it was free.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So that's about it. Thank you. We shall be continuing in our regular class because that's the reason why